This is a legend.
That's, quite a nickname.
We can all agree that The Boys is based on parody, right? It's entertaining by itself because Garth Ennis is a master at making gripping stories, but the comics are all about taking the tropes we've come to love and twisting them upside down. Homelander is Superman with the mindset of a fascist toddler. The Seven is basically a corrupted Justice League-style team, built to show what happens when superhero branding becomes more important than actual heroism. We know it, we love it, and we want more of it. But in this group of characters, there's one character who tends to get skipped over a lot, and that's the Legend.
He really doesn't know who I am. See, when I was in charge, you go with your gut.
He's arguably one of the sharpest pieces of satire that Ennis wrote in this story, and based on what you've seen, the show or the comic, you have two completely different versions of him. And that's really interesting, because in my eyes, the show Legend and the comics Legend show us the differences you have to keep in mind when you're adapting satire for mainstream media. Don't believe me? Alright, I'll show you. Join me in this video, where I tell you how the two different versions of Legend are a key point in media adaptability and a major plot point in how the story plays out. Who is the Legend? If you strip both versions down to their storytelling function, they serve a similar role, an aging insider who knows decades of Vought's secrets. The Legend is an old man with no powers. He sits at the center of decades of superhero secrets. Basically, he's an information broker. He is, after all, a former insider who spent years helping Vought, be it through corporate management or manufactured mythology. And now he's in his twilight years, ready to talk because he's tired and just disenchanted enough to let things slip. He's no hero, at least not in the way The Boys describe superheroes. But that's the whole point, isn't it? The whole universe of The Boys is populated with people who have godlike abilities that they use to do monstrous things. In comparison, Legend is just an old man sitting in a cluttered room. Who knows where all the bodies were buried because he was one of the people helping bury them. And his function in the storytelling is all about intelligence. He gives Butcher and the boys information about Vought, helping fill the gaps around origins, cover-ups, and institutional crimes that never made it into the official record. Now let's see how the character works in the two different media. The Legend in The Boys show. If you've seen the Amazon Prime Video series The Boys, we see the Legend played by Paul Reiser. We first see him in the 5th episode of Season 3. He was introduced as a former vice president of hero management at Vought, basically an earlier version of the kind of corporate superhero handler role Madeline Stillwell later represented. For decades, he managed superheroes, smoothed over scandals, and kept everything under wraps to make sure nothing that would embarrass Vought ever reached the public. Now he's retired to this sprawling penthouse apartment. From his decor, you can tell he's still mourning the loss of his golden days. When Butcher, Mother's Milk, and Huey show up looking for Soldier Boy and the buried history of Payback, the Legend instead tries to tell them about the time he and Marlon Brando had an intimate moment at the Chateau Marmont. Eric Kripke has said that the show deliberately moved the Legend away from the Stan Lee-style comic book figure and toward a Robert Evans-style Hollywood producer, because movies and television became the dominant superhero media in the show's world. Because from where Kripke stood, he knew that in The Boys comic books, the main dominant superhero media was comics. So in the show's universe, where movies and television are the dominant cultural products, the equivalent should be someone from Hollywood. So who better than a film producer? This is why Evans was the best landing spot, and Reiser embodied that role fully. He's sardonic and funny in the way that people who have seen a lot and regret most of it can be. You can tell right off the bat that he's someone who's had his heyday, you know? And he gives Butcher all that he needs, because Butcher is the first person in a long time who's asking him the right questions. So when he gives all of those answers, you can tell that he has self-awareness. He isn't trying to redeem himself because he knows he's beyond redemption. He's just talking about it because he knows a lot, and he wants to give that information to someone who will understand its importance. While that's all fine and dandy, the biggest difference between him and the comic book counterpart is that he's not the same kind of comic book satire. The version of the Legend is more like a cynical executive's good gossip, and I personally feel like the show made the right call by changing the character's entire role, because the real thing would have been too far. It's better for the boys to butcher fictional corporations, invented politicians, and the entertainment machine around them. The Legend in The Boys comics. Now, in the comics, the Legend is often referred to as Old Legend by the fans. He's still the informant, but that's where the similarities end. Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson first introduced him in the 7th issue, and that introduction is truly something. Butcher walks into Vinny's comics and heads down into the basement despite the warning from the man at the counter. And what does he see? Old Legend with a woman, in a very compromised position. An Old Legend? He has no shame. He talks about how they should have given him some privacy, but then tells the woman to come back later at the same time time and to pick up $10 from the man at the cash counter, and then he moves on. He's all business, no BS. And rightfully, he's surrounded by mountains of back issues, cover art, and other material from decades of superhero publishing. They really make you feel the dinginess of his room in the panel. It's small and suffocating, with the only light shining on him. It isn't glamorous, but you know how it works. Kinda like those dingy, dilapidated Chinese restaurants that look like they'd fall over but have the best food, you know? Back in the day, he worked at Victory Comics, Vought America's in-universe superhero publishing arm, which functions like a twisted Marvel-style myth factory inside the world of the boys. And for decades, Old Legend's job was to take real Vought superheroes and transform them into comic book legends that people would worship. Every single crime these horrible soups had committed, Legend helped spin it into cleaner myths, heroic branding, and stories people could worship. So if there's some secret someone wants to hide, he knows about it. That job in itself is a major plot point that redefines the universe, you know? In this world, the superhero comics are their own corporate ecosystem where they manufacture stories. Everything anyone felt for the soups that the boys were going to destroy, yeah, that was crafted by Old Legend. The Stan Lee parody angle. I genuinely believe that through Old Legend, Ennis was critiquing the golden age of superhero comics. The golden age of comics, as you all know, was the time when grandfatherly showmen built mythologies that would inspire generations to come. I mean, guys, come on. We all know that Captain America was created as a patriotic symbol, right? So in a way, I feel Ennis is critiquing those creators and the creators inside Vought, asking whether they knew what they were making the stories for, and whether they chose to keep going despite it all. And Ennis pulled no punches. You look at Old Legend for a second, and it's hard to miss the Stan Lee parody and homage angle. Ennis knew what he was doing, and he never pretended otherwise. Ennis has been reported as saying he never read a Stan Lee comic cover to cover, which adds another layer to how loaded this parody feels. And this feeling was actually mutual because Stan Lee was also reported to have disliked Ennis' darker Marvel work, particularly the Fury Max material. Drama always catches up, doesn't it? But then again, drama and spite have been the fuel of great masterpieces over the years. Look at the Sistine Chapel. There was a lot of spite there, which is a story for another time. So with all that being said, Ennis intentionally designed Old Legend to ask this structural question of what it means to sell a dream that you know you're intentionally glamorizing. Old Legend's role in the comics. Throughout the comic run, Butcher visits Old Legend repeatedly. The first meeting happens in the 7th issue, and then immediately a dynamic is built. Butcher returns to him multiple times as the comic digs deeper into Vaught's history and the hidden machinery behind the soups. Later, during the Innocent stretch of the comic, Old Legend remains part of the information network around Butcher, Huey, Starlight, and Vaught's deeper secrets. Old Legend also has a strange, ugly personal connection to Queen Maeve, because the comics reveal that Blarney Cock from Teenage Kicks is their son. Huey, after being doused with Compound V, had no idea how strong he really was and accidentally punched Blarney's insides out during the Teenage Kicks fight. Vought later brings Blarney back through a Compound V-assisted revival process, but the result is broken, grotesque, and tragic in the most boys way possible. The real point is not family warmth, it's how emotionally hollow Old Legend has become after a lifetime inside Vaught's machine. You can tell that as a man who's been in this field of work for this long, he places no importance on connections. All he cares about is the information, and that's about it. What happens to Old Legend? After the absolutely jaw-dropping White House climax, Butcher goes to get rid of Old Legend because he wants to tie up all the loose ends. Near the end, Butcher does go to eliminate Old Legend, as part of tying up all the loose ends connected to his larger plan. The exact mechanics of Old Legend's death have been debated, with some summaries treating it as a heart attack before Butcher can act, and some fan discussions reading the moment as Butcher killing him off panel. But the symbolic point is clear either way. Old Legend dies surrounded by the superhero myth machine he helped build, just as that machine collapses around him. But is he regretful about it? I don't think so. The two legends and what they really mean. Both versions of Legend come with their own flair, and if you asked me to pick between the two, I wouldn't be able to choose. I love the sardonic show version as much as I like the potty mouth, straight-to-business comic book counterpart. Both of them are the epitome of the same question. What is your contribution to the world you set fire to? Both of them should have guilt, should exchange information because they know they've sinned, and should grovel for their punishment. But that's just the comic book enthusiast in me talking with my naivety glasses on. Both of them are real and complex. They don't have black or white sides, they're simply gray. They're bad people who have done bad things, and now to stay relevant or flex their heydays, they end up bringing their downfall upon themselves. A fitting ending, wouldn't you say? Let us know in the comments what you guys think about the Legend. Who's your favorite? The show version or the comic version? Let me know and I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. Bye bye!